Patriotic greeting to all of you. Today, the ASEAN community is combating not just the COVID 19 pandemic, but also the threats of censorship with our media and press.
As members of the Political Science Society of Centro Escolar University, we value the importance of press freedom, dissent, and civic consciousness in the Philippine political realm.
So, without further ado, we now welcome you to the ASEAN Press Freedom, Media Censorship, and Repression in Southeast Asia.
Today's event will tackle the current status of our ASEAN press freedom and the impact that it has over our media and security.
To formally start our program, let us all put ourselves in the presence of our loving Father and listen to the doxology to be led by the Centro Escolar University Singers Manila.
And to be immediately followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
I will sing with the Spirit. I will sing with the Spirit. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. I will sing with the Spirit. I will sing with the Spirit. Hallelujah, 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 and I will sing with the understanding also. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And I will sing with the understanding also. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And I will sing with the understanding also. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I will sing with the Spirit. I will sing with the Spirit. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiliw, dalas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y buhay. Lupang pinilang, tuyan ka ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagalang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng pamraw, ay hinatang tulakaw, sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng katawan mo'y tagumpay na
To give us his opening remarks, let us lend our ears to the dynamic president of the Political Science Society, Mr. Renz Aidan Fernandez.
Sa ating mga panauhin sa umagang ito, sa mga propesor ng Departamento ng Agham Panlipunan at Humanidades sa pamumuno ni Profesor Ariel Habeliana, sa mga propesor ng programa sa Agham Pampulitika sa pamumuno ni Profesor Julius O. De Leon, kay Ms. Lira Magtalas, resource speaker sa umagang ito, sa mga kapwa ko mag-aaral ng Centro Escolar University at sa lahat ng mga manonood. Isang mapagpalayang araw sa ating lahat. Ika nga ni dating US Deputy Secretary of State Warren Christopher, without a free and independent media, true democracy is unattainable. Isang siglo ang lumipas nang magsimulang umusbong ang media sa sanlibutan at maging parte ng pang-araw-araw nating buhay. Mula sa mga nakakaaliw na palabas hanggang sa mga maiinit na balita araw-araw. Media ang ating naging saligan upang maging mulat tayo sa kasalukuyang socio-political na klima ng bansa. Naging parte din ang media sa mga mahalagang pangyayari sa kasaysayan, katulad ng inaugurasyon mula pa ng Ikatlong Republika, pagpataw ng martial law, at pagpatay sa dating Senador Benigno Aquino Jr. Naging saksi din ang media sa dalawang People Power Revolution na naging simbolo ng demokrasya sa Pilipinas at samot-saring issue tungkol sa korupsyon at seguridad ng bansa. Hindi ito makakamit kung ang ating media ay hindi independent at hawag sa leeg ng Estado. Ngayong bagong milenyo, napasailalim sa samot-saring pag-atake ang media sa buong Timog Silangang Asya. Dumami ang mga naging kaso ng pagpatay sa mga mamamahayag nito lamang nagdaang 10 taon. Ang mga lehitimong tagapagbigay ng tamang balita ay natabunan ng kung ano-anong mga huwad na plataporma upang maghasik ng kalituhan sa mga tagapakinig. Ang dating malaya at independent na media ay inaatake ng kung ano-anong banta mula sa Estado. Nakakatakot isipin na sa isang unyon ng mga bansa ay may ganitong uri ng aktibidades. Nakakatakot na daw magsulat ng mga balita tungkol sa mga nasa Estado dahil buhay na ang nakasalalay at baka bukas ang paa mo na pala ay nasa bingit na ng bangin. Ganun pa man, ang pagiging watchdog ng tao at ng bayan ay mananatili sa prinsipyo ng bawat isang mamamahayag. Ang pagbibigay ng tama at makabuluhang balita ay magpapatuloy sa kabila ng banta ng mga nasa poder. Dahil ang media ang magsisilbing mata at tenga ng tao sa mga ginagawa ng gobyerno. Ang forum na ito ay isang daan upang mamulat ang tao sa kalagayan ng mga mamahayag sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na ginagawa at sinusuong ang panganib na nakakabit sa kanilang propesyon. Ang malayang pamamahayag ay mananatiling simbolo ng demokrasya laban sa represyon o pang-aabuso. Ipaglaban natin ito. Muli, isang maganda at mapagpalayang umaga sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernandez. We would also like to acknowledge the presence of the supportive faculty members of CEU. Maraming salamat po sa pagdalos sa amin ngayong araw na ito. Now, to introduce our respectable speaker for today's event, let us call on the Treasurer of the Political Science Society, Mr. Jose Gabriel S. Bermudez.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On today's virtual gathering of the CEU Political Science Society, it is with pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, who will preside on the topic, ASEAN Press Freedom, Media Censorship and Repression in Southeast Asia. Our guest speaker for today earned her bachelor's degree in political science at the University of the Philippines, Manila, and was the former chairperson of the Gabriela Youth, UP, Manila. Currently, she is taking her master's degree in ASEAN Studies at the UP Open University. Also, she is a lecturer at the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Colegio de San Juan de Letran. And lastly, she is also a lecturer at the School of Education, Liberal Arts, Music, and Social Work at Centro Escolar University. Let us all welcome virtually our guest speaker for today, Ms. Lyra I. Magtalas.
Magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Naririnig po ba ako ng malinaw at maayos?
Yes, Miss.
Okay, no? So magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Ako po si Lyra Magtalas. At una sa lahat, no, pagbati sa mga kapaguro at syempre sa mga escolarians, no, na nakasubaybay sa ating webinar ngayong hapon. At gayon din, no, ay nagpapasalamat ako kay Professor Julius De Leon, the head of the Political Science Program, and of course to the Political Science Society of CEU for inviting me today, no. Pagpupugay po sa atin, no, dahil napakagandang initiative ng mga ganitong aktibidad, no. Palagi kong sinasabi na sa panahon ng krisis, napakahalaga ng mga ganitong talakayan, no, napakahalagang alalahanin natin ang ating mga karapatang pantao sa panahon na sinusubok itong mga ito, no, sa panahon na laganap ang paglabag, no, sa karapatang pantao. At isa nga doon yung ating kalayaan o yung ating karapatan na magpahayag, yung tinatawag natin na freedom of expression, at isa sa mga elemento nito, of course, is our press freedom, no? So I was asked to discuss about the press freedom, the state of press freedom in Southeast Asia, no, sa kasalukuyan, no. Pero syempre, bago tayo pumunta doon, kailangan sagutin muna natin yung tanong na ano ba yung press freedom at bakit ba ito mahalaga? Tama ba? No? So ano po ba yung sinasabi natin na press freedom? We cannot discuss press freedom without talking about our freedom of expression, no? Kagaya ng sabi ko, yung press freedom nakapaloob yan doon sa tinatawag natin na freedom of expression. Ito yung sinasabi natin, no, na karapatan natin to freely express ideas, informations, belief, opinions, and criticisms, no, without having to fear that the government will retaliate against us with that the government will censor us or restrict us based on content, no? So madaling sabi, ito po yung kalayaan natin na magpahayag o yung kalayaan at karapatan ng mga pahayagan, no? Kadalasan ginagamit interchangeably yung freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press, no? Isa lang naman yung tinutukoy natin dito, yung pagpapalit-palit ng termino na speech, expression, and press has more to do with the manner in which the message is being communicated, no? Halimbawa, pag sinabi po natin speech, ang tinutukoy natin dito ay yung mga verbal and oral, no, na statements. Kapag naman sinabi natin freedom of the press, of course, tinutukoy natin dito ay yung mga publication, no, yung mga pinapublish na impormasyon, pieces of information ng mga pahayagan, maaring sa television, maaring sa dyaryo, or pwede rin sa mga online platforms, no, na ginagamit na rin nila sa kasalukuyan. Yung freedom of expression, ito naman yung mas malawak, no, na medium, mas malawak na mga medium yung nasasakop, no. Halimbawa, expressing your opinion, expressing your political stance through art, halimbawa through a song or through poetry, no. And again, no, sa madaling sabi, lahat po ito ay tumutukoy sa ating kalayaan at karapatan na magpahayag, no. At ito ay ginagarantiyan, no, ng mga national laws, no, ng mga konstitusyon natin, no. Halimbawa dito sa Pilipinas, Article 3, Section 4 ng ating konstitusyon yung kumikilala sa freedom of expression nating mga Pilipino. And at the regional level, no, sa Southeast Asia, kinikilala ng ASEAN Charter 2025, no, yung freedom of expression nating mga Southeast Asians, no. In fact, sa ASEAN's Human Rights Declaration, no, malinaw na sinasabi that every person has the right to freedom of opinion and expression, including freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information whether orally, in writing, or through any other medium of that person's choice. So freedom of expression yung tinutukoy natin dito. And of course, no, ang specific na parte nito na tumutukoy sa freedom of the press is yung pag-i-impart ng information, no, sa taong bayan, no? So ang tanong po natin ngayon ay bakit mahalaga yung freedom of expression at bakit mahalaga yung press freedom? Unang-una sa lahat, no, they deliver information, they deliver the truth, no? Ganun kasimple. Hindi lahat ng mamamayan, halimbawa, ay merong panahon or resources to investigate the issues affecting them and their community, no? Halimbawa, hindi lahat ng mamamayang Pilipino ay may academic na ability, no? Na i-assess halimbawa yung mga polisiya o yung mga batas na meron tayo. Halimbawa sa kasalukuyan, isa sa mainit na issue sa Philippines is the Anti-Terrorism Act. No, hindi lahat ng Pilipino may kakayahan na maunawaan yung mga termino, yung mga jargons na binabanggit doon sa batas, no? Hindi nila fully mauunawaan ano ba yung epekto nito sa kanila, no? Kung sila halimbawa ay hindi edukado, kung sila halimbawa ay hindi nakapag-aral, o kung sila ay walang anumang resources, no? So nariyan yung media, sila yung maasahan natin to deliver information and to deliver the truth because they are armed with skills like research and critical thinking. And these journalists, no, they know what questions to ask, what leads to pursue, and how to fact check, no. Kumbaga kapag nilahad nila sa atin yung balita, yung impormasyon, no, na fact check na ito, of course, no, na examine na whether totoo ba, lehitimo ba yung mga ebidensya at impormasyon na pinapresent nila sa atin, no. And that way, no, nag-guide nila yung mamamayan, no, to assess the situation of the country, to determine kung sino yung iboboto sa na eleksyon o kaya naman para malaman kung anong hakbang maaari natin gawin, whether to participate in petitions or protests halimbawa, no. So unang kahalagahan ng press freedom ay yung paghahatid nito sa atin ng katotohanan at impormasyon. Pangalawa, of course, no, it's yung accountability kasi kagaya nga nabanggit, no, ng President ng Political Science Society, yung media yung nagsisilbing watchdog on tower. It holds those in authority to account, no? In the case of corruption and human rights violations, a free press is essential to exposing abuses of power, no? Sila yung nagsisilbing bridge sa pagitan nating taong bayan at ng mga opisyal natin sa pamahalaan, ng mga may kapangyarihan at may otoridad, no? Kasi sila yung gumagabay, no, dun sa ating pag-unawa kung epektibo ba, kung efficient ba yung mga policies, programs, and laws na pinapatupad ng ating pamahalaan o ng ating mga government officials. And in cases, no, na may mga anomalya, may corruption, may mga paglabag sa karapatang pantao, media din yung nariyan na nag-expose ng lahat na ito, no? Kaya natin nalalaman kung paano tayo magde-demand ng accountability at pananagutan, no, mula doon sa mga government officials na tayo mismo yung nag-elect, tayo mismo yung nagbigay ng kapangyarihan. And of course, no, yung media, ito rin yung nagsisilbing boses natin. It seeks out and circulates ideas, comments, and opinions, no, providing a platform for a multiplicity of voices to be heard, no. Kasi sa mga pahayagan, halimbawa, no, sa mga programa sa telebisyon, sa radyo, and even, no, sa mga page and website nila, sa mga online platforms, no, meron na silang mga pinapublish na mga opinion pieces, na mga criticisms, no. That way, again, no, nabibridge yung taong bayan doon sa mga officials natin, sa mga people with power and authority, no. Kasi harapan natin na nailalahad sa kanila yung ating mga kritisismo, yung ating feedback, no. And sabi ko nga, no, sa panahon ng crisis, napakahalaga ng freedom of expression at lalong-lalo na itong press freedom, no. Kasi during a crisis, no, it is imperative for government to listen to its people in order to effectively respond to their needs and in order to effectively address the issue at hand, no. Kaya nga, higit pa dito sa unang tatlong dahilan na binanggit natin, no, isa sa nakikita nating kahalagahan talaga ng free press or ng press freedom sa kasalukuyan ay yung role nito, no, sa gitna ng pandemya, no, ng kasalukuyang crisis na kinakaharap natin, no. The United Nations, the World Health Organization, at iba pang international bodies, they all recognize that press freedom is critical to countering COVID-19, the so-called COVID-19 pandemic of fake news, no. Sabi nga ng World Health Organization, press freedom is the antidote to the so-called infodemic. sinasabi nila na infodemic yung paglaganap ng mga fake news, paglaganap ng false information, no, na nagsimulang lumala nung nagsimula ang pandemya. Siguro naman bilang tayo ay mga active sa social media, no, yung mga kabataan kadalasan lagi tayong online, no. So, no-observe natin itong sinasabi ng UN at ng World Health Organization na infodemic, no. Sabi nga nila, truth could be considered the first casualty of the coronavirus pandemic, no. At sinasabi din nila, no, na dapat natin i-recognize, no, na kailangan kasabay halimbawa ng malawak na pagbabakuna, no, ng vaccination, diba? Kasabay na mass testing, kasabay ng vaccination, dapat tinutugunan din itong issue na ito, no, kasi itong false information, ito paglagay ng fake news about COVID-19, including fake news about the vaccine, ay delikado sa kalusugan ng mga tao, no? Halimbawa, maraming kumalat na harmful health advice. Kung naalala nyo, merong kumalat sa Facebook, for instance, na nagsasabi na para daw mailigtas yung ating katawan from the virus, kailangan daw natin uminom ng bleach, which clearly isn't scientific, isn't true, and it may cause death. Tama ba? Or halimbawa, minsan na nating narinig from our own president, no, na kailangan daw i-disinfect natin yung ating face mask using gasoline, na again, ay hindi healthy at hindi scientific, hindi advisable at hindi dapat ginagawa. O kaya naman, minsan ko rin narinig mula sa isa pang government official, si Salvador Panelo, no, na ang sagot lang daw sa COVID-19 ay pagkain ng saging. No, yung mga ganitong klaseng advice, no, ay harmful, masabi natin harmful o nakakasama sa publiko kasi hindi nila, dahil sa mga ganitong klaseng impormasyon, no, hindi nila mauunawaan fully gaano kalala yung sitwasyon at kung paano sila dapat mag-ingat, no, mula sa kumakalat na virus na ito. And of course, napakarami pang conspiracy theories, halimbawa yung mga nagsasabi na yung COVID-19 is just a political tool, no, o kaya naman yung mga bakuna ay hindi talaga effective, yan ay nasa experimental stage pa lang at dapat hindi ina-acquire kasi ito daw ay nakamamatay, no. So yung ganitong paglaganap ng false information, yung tinatawag nga natin na fake news, no, ay nakakabahala dahil again, no, nakakaapekto ito doon sa kakayahan ng mga tao, no, na isang individual, no, na ingatan yung kanyang sarili mula doon sa makalat na sakit, no. Sabi nga, no, ng United Nations when they said that truth could be considered the first casualty of the coronavirus pandemic, no, nakita nila na ang dalawang umangat talaga na issue, no, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic is the spread of misinformation and disinformation, no. Siguro pamilyar po tayo dito yung misinformation, ito yung pagkalat natin ng maling impormasyon o balita unknowingly, no, minsan hindi naman tayo aware na mali pala yung information na sinishare natin sa Facebook, hindi natin na fact check, hindi natin na consider yung reliability and credibility ng source, no. Or madalas disinformation. Kapag sinabi naman natin disinformation, ito yung intentional na pagpapakalat ng false information, intentional na pagpapakalat ng fake news, no, na kadalasan ay may financial or political agenda, no. Kadalasan ito yung nakikita natin sa mga trolls, halimbawa on Facebook and on Twitter, no. So lahat pareho ito, no, ay nakapaloob sa kategorya ng sinasabi nga na infodemic, no, yung pandemic of fake news, no. At nakikita natin, no, hindi lamang sa Philippines, hindi lamang sa Southeast Asia, at the international level, nakikita natin na malaki yung responsibilidad ng media sa ganitong panahon, no. No one during this pandemic can take the place of the media to transmit information to the public, promote messages on keeping people safe and healthy, and counter false information with facts and science, no. So higit kailanman ngayon, no, nakikita talaga natin na kailangan nating itaguyod at ipaglaban hindi lamang yung freedom of expression natin as individuals, kundi yung press freedom ng mga pahayagan natin, no, ng mga media outlets na meron tayo in our country and our region, no. So ang tanong naman natin ngayon, no, yung major objective natin in this webinar, no, ano ba yung kasalukuyang kalagayan ng press freedom in Southeast Asia? No? So in this list, Time enumerates all attempts to curtail free speech and press freedom in Southeast Asia since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So ito po ay literal na listahan ng mga kaso ng paglabag, no, sa freedom of expression, sa free speech and press freedom sa loob ng ating rehiyon dito sa Southeast Asia, no? At nakikita natin, no, at the regional level that the lack of press freedom in ASEAN countries continues to be a growing concern, no? Nariyan pa rin yung censorship and repression. Since the commencement of ASEAN, no, higit 50 years na yung Association of Southeast Asian Nation, and sa loob ng ilang dekadang ito, no, we have achieved economic prosperity, no? Sadly, hindi lumelebel yung civil liberties, yung kaunlaran pagdating sa civil liberties and human rights doon sa economic prosperity na naabot natin. In fact, in the last 5 decades, no, ASEAN has emerged as the 7th largest economy in the world, no. Pero again, no, hindi nangangahulugan na sa pang-ekonomiyang aspeto ay umuunlad, no, ay umaangat yung ating rehiyon, ay ganoon na rin sa iba pang fields, no. Kagaya na lang nga sa civil liberties and human rights, specifically sa freedom of expression, sa free speech, sa press freedom. No, again, lack of press freedom in ASEAN countries continues to be a growing concern. Laganap yung censorship and repression. No, in fact, the 2021 World Press Freedom Index by Reporters Without Borders found that press freedom has largely declined across the region. No, according to their analysis, no, according to their research, no, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, no, ginamit daw itong crisis na ito, no, to justify laws, policies, government laws, policies, and programs, no, under the guise of safeguarding public health. Pero ang totoo, they're just using their emergency powers. They're just using their authority, no, to curtail free speech and press freedom. In Southeast Asia, many of these regulations are being wielded for political ends, such as interrogating, arresting, and detaining critics who question the government's handling of the crisis. No, isa ito sa pinaka-threat sa freedom of expression, sa press freedom sa kasalukuyan, no, yung pagpapahayag natin ng kritisismo, ng mga komento at sarili nating opinion doon sa response na ating pamahalaan sa crisis. Halimbawa, yung mga comments and opinions ng publiko about vaccination, about mass testing, no, about the procurement, halimbawa, of face shields here in the Philippines, or procurement of vaccines, no. Kadalasan nasa-threaten yung karapatan ng mga individuals, mostly journalists and activists, for airing out their grievances to the government, no, for criticizing the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. At bagamat iba-iba, no, yung sistema ng mga Southeast Asian countries, no, halos uniform, halos iisa yung narrative, no, when it comes to press freedom amidst COVID-19 pandemic. Kasi again, no, ang issue kadalasan sa kasalukuyan ay yung government response, no, na kinikriticize ng mga individuals, ng mga journalists and activists, no. So tingnan po natin ano yung kalagayan ng press freedom sa iba't ibang bansa sa Southeast Asia, no. Bago tayo pumunta doon sa mga medyo karumal-dumal na sitwasyon, no, ay highlight muna natin yung natatangi, no, sa Southeast Asia na hindi bumaba yung ranking, no, sa World Press Freedom Index in 2020, no. In fact, itong East Timor, no, ay nasa 71st siya, no, up 7 places pa since last year, no. So ibig sabihin before 2021 ay nasa 78th, no, yung ranking ng East Timor when it comes to the state of their press freedom, no. Pero since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, no, mas tumaas pa yung kanilang ranking. Ibig sabihin, mas gumanda pa, no? Mas umayos pa yung sitwasyon sa kanilang bansa, no? According to RSF, no journalist has ever been jailed in connection with their work in East Timor since this country of just 1.2 million inhabitants won independence in 2002. Pero siguro, isa talaga, no, sa malaking factor kung bakit hindi gaanong malaki yung bilang ng human rights violations, lalong-lalo na may kinalaman sa press freedom in this country, no, ay dahil sa maliit nitong population, no. In most Southeast Asian countries kung saan malaki ang populasyon at marami ang kaso ng COVID-19, no, dito natin makikita yung talagang masasakol na means and ways, no, ng mga pamahalaan to curtail free speech and press freedom, no. Katulad na lamang sa Vietnam, no? Vietnam came in at 175th place for press freedom. The ruling Vietnamese Communist Party intensified this crackdown on dissent. This involved a protracted campaign of arrests of dissident bloggers and independent journalists, including several members of the Independent Journalists Association. No? Vietnam introduced fines of 10 to 20 million dong, equivalent to many months of minimum wage salary, for disseminating fake news on social media. Police had already used pre-existing regulations to summon more than 650 people over coronavirus-related posts by mid-March, according to Amnesty International. Of those, 146 were fined, and the rest forced to delete their statements. Others, like 28-year-old Facebook user Mafung Wok Fu, were less lucky, receiving jail sentences of up to 9 months. No, 650 people na nag-post lang sa social media, no, were asked to explain, no, were interrogated, no, patungkol sa kanilang mga posts dahil ang content ng kanilang post ay may kinalaman, no, sa government's response, no, to the COVID-19 pandemic, no, and out of the 650, again 146 yung pinwelsa, no, na i-delete yung kanilang mga statements sa social media at yung isa ay nakulong pa, no. So ito ay patunay, no, na sa gitna ng krisis, no, ay mas mahalaga sa ilang mga pamahalaan, no, na maprotektahan yung kanilang imahe, yung kanilang mga pangalan, no, imbes na managot, no, sa kanilang taong bayan kung sila ay nagkukulang o nagkakamali when it comes to their response to the crisis, no. Imagine these were just social media posts, no, at sila ay pinulis ng kanilang government, no, at ang threat pa is may fine na 10 to 20 million dong, although fortunately hindi lahat ng 615 na to ay naparusahan ng pagkakulong or siningil ng fine, no. Nevertheless, no, hindi dapat tayo natatakot, no, na mag-post sa social media, halimbawa lalong-lalo na if we are just airing out our grievances, no, kasi again, no, tayo dapat yung inuuna, yung interest dapat ng mga tao yung inuuna, lalong-lalo na sa gitna na isang crisis, no. Next is Malaysia. In March 2021, Malaysia also passed a fake news ordinance which made publishing false information related to COVID-19 punishable by up to 3 years in prison. Unsurprisingly, Malaysia fell 18 spots to 119th place in the annual World Press Freedom Index, the largest drop of any country. Ganun kalaki yung binaba ng rank ng Malaysia since the COVID-19 pandemic. Its slide down the table was also hastened by unwarranted investigations of Al Jazeera journalists over a documentary about the country's treatment of migrant workers during the pandemic, and several cases against the pioneering news outlet Malaysia Kini, including one in which it was found guilty of contempt of court and fined heavily for comments left on the site by readers, no. So may kaso kung saan inimbestigahan yung mga Al Jazeera. Kung familiar kayo sa Al Jazeera, ito ay isang kilalang media outlet, no, at the international level, no. So they were investigating the case of migrant workers during the pandemic, and simply because they are examining their situation, no, ay inimbestigahan na sila agad, no. Nagkaroon na ng unwarranted investigations. At another example nga, no, isa sa mga pinakamalaking news outlets sa Malaysia ay they were found guilty of contempt of court, and they were fined for the comments ng mga readers sa kanilang website. Again, ang content ng lahat na ito is the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next is Singapore. In Singapore naman, it fell 2 spots to 160th place on the World Press Freedom Index, the second lowest ranking in Southeast Asia above Vietnam. They also used misinformation laws to crack down on negative press related to the pandemic. The Protection from Online Falsehoods and Manipulation Act, passed in 2019, allows government ministers to order any online information they deem false or misleading taken down. So ito yung ni-utilize nila when the pandemic started. The health minister utilized POFMA, Protection from Online Falsehoods and Manipulation Act, in February 2020 to issue a correction order to the owner of a Facebook page that claimed the government was unable to trace the source of COVID-19 cases in the country. So kung papansinin po natin, ang common sa mga bansang nabanggit na natin ay yung pagkakaroon ng laws against misinformation, laws against fake news. But kung napapansin din po natin, ang commonality sa kanilang lahat is that yung pamahalaan yung mapagpasya or arbiter of truth. Sila yung mapagpasya kung ano ba yung false, ano ba yung true information, or ano ba yung facts, ano ba yung fake news. And that is dangerous, kasi ibig sabihin nito ay hindi objective yung truth at nakasalalay lamang sa perspective ng mga government officials o ng anumang ahensya, and kadalasan influence ito by political agenda. Next is Thailand. In Thailand, the government of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha issued a decree in March 2020, making the dissemination of information that is false or capable of causing fear in the public punishable by up to 5 years in prison, and allowing the authorities to correct any published information. And isa sa mga issue sa Thailand when it comes to freedom of expression, ay yung kaso in March 2021 against a former Future Forward Party leader, dahil kinriticize siya, nag-publish siya ng kanyang opinion, ng kanyang criticism about the government's over-reliance on a company owned by the king to manufacture and supply AstraZeneca vaccines for both Thailand and the wider region, despite the company having no prior experience producing vaccine. Sounds familiar, although in the Philippines, face shield yung naging controversial na procurement. So Thai citizens have accused the government of short-sightedness for not procuring enough vaccines from other sources amid a third wave of infections. Although Thailand aims to vaccinate 70% of its population by the end of 2021, less than 2% of the population has been fully vaccinated, casting doubt over the tourism-reliant economy's recovery. So hindi lamang mga kilalang personalities, hindi lamang journalists and activists yung nagki-criticize dun sa pag-procure ng sa vaccine procurement ng government, kasi nga nagre-rely sila sa isang malaking kumpanya na pagmamay-ari ng king. On the other hand, nakikita ng publiko na hindi sapat yung bakuna na na-acquire, na po-procure from this company. At na pangalawa, pinagdudahan nila of course yung kawalan ng prior experience ng company na ito when it comes to producing vaccines. So malinaw na may anomalyang nagaganap, kasi imbes na humanap ng mas malaking source of vaccine para masiguro na ma-reach ng Thailand yung 70% na vaccination by the end of 2021, ay nagre-relay sila sa isang company within their country, kasi of course ay may involved na corruption, kasi nga kakilala may influensya, may authority yung nagmamay-ari ng company. At syempre nababahala yung mga publiko, na mabahala yung taong bayan sa Thailand, kasi alam nila na tourism reliant yung kanilang ekonomiya, at hindi sila makakapagpapasok ng mga turista, hindi nila mapapalago muli yung kanilang turismo kung mananatiling mataas yung mga kaso ng COVID-19 sa kanilang bansa. In Indonesia naman, no, where a democratic transition followed the end of dictatorship in 1998, journalists who criticized the president can now be imprisoned for 18 months under a new directive that targets both coronavirus-related hoax and information perceived to be hostile to the leadership, no? So, kanina sinasabi lang anti-fake news lang yung mga laws, no? Pero pansin natin yung sa Thailand, sinasabi na nakapag daw nag-cause ng fear, no, nag-cause ng fear sa mga mamabasa, sa mga tao, ay maaani ka ng managot, no, kapag yung post mo ay pinagmulan halimbawa ng anxiety, ng fear, no, sa mga tao about COVID, no. Pero sa Indonesia naman mas malawak, no, yung mas broad yung maaring maging batayan, no, ng kaparusahan o ng pagkakakulong. Na halimbawa, hindi lang coronavirus related fake news kundi information perceived to be hostile to the leadership. Ibig sabihin, clearly sinasabi nila when you criticize the government, no, ay maaari kang maparusahan. Yun ay maaring mag-result, no, sa 18 months of imprisonment. A similar situation pertained in Indonesia, no, na nasa 113th place in the World Press Freedom Index, where the government of President Joko Widodo not only banned journalists from publishing false information related to COVID-19, but also any information hostile to the president of the government, as I've said. Next, in Cambodia, where the Prime Minister Hun Sen, was initially skeptical about the threat posed by the coronavirus, the government has given itself unprecedented emergency powers that include the right to ban any information that could cause unrest, fear, or disorder. No? Halimbawa, yung post mo ay nagsasabi na ang dami na ng kaso ng COVID-19 dito sa ating bansa, no, dapat hindi na tayo lumabas kasi ang dami ng namamatay ng sobrang bilis, no, at walang mga spaces sa mga hospitals, no. Halimbawa, nag-cause ito ng ingay talaga sa social media, no. Maraming tao yung nag-share, maraming tao yung nagalit, maraming tao yung from this ay kinriticize yung government response, no. Pasok yun doon sa sinasabi ng Cambodian government, no, na information that could cause unrest, fear, or disorder. And according to account by Human Rights Watch, as of the end of April, Cambodian officials had arrested at least 30 people on such charges as spreading fake news about the virus and steering chaos. Among them was a journalist who was imprisoned and had his online broadcasting license revoked for quoting the Prime Minister. The Cambodian government on May 4 also banned reporting from its COVID-19 red zones. Yung mga red zones are the areas where residents are barred from leaving their homes, they were experiencing food shortages. No, so yung mga red zones yun yung parang mga areas under ECQ dito sa Philippines. Like sila yung may pinakamalalang situation, no, kaya sila tawag na red zones. And there was a time, no, in 2021 during the first 6 months na talagang nagsuffer sila with food shortages kasi nga hindi sila nakakalabas, no, and naapektuhan of course yung livelihood, and naapektuhan of course accessibility ng food and other resources, no, at binan ng Cambodian government yung pagre-report sa area na iyon, no, which is clearly censorship and repression kasi hindi nalalaman ng tao, hindi nalalaman ng buong bansa ano yung nangyayari dito sa isang specific na region na to sa aming country. We don't even know, no, how to help, no, yung mga kapwa natin na citizens, no, and at the same time ano ba yung estado nila, like gaano karami na ba yung cases, gaano karami yung deaths, no. And balikan natin example, no, yung isang kaso kung saan a journalist was imprisoned and his online broadcasting license was revoked dahil lamang sa isa sa mga artikulo niya ay kinote niya yung Prime Minister about COVID-19 response. In Myanmar, no, of course, isa ito sa may pinakamalalang sitwasyon, no, sa kasalukuyan, no. It came in at 140th position in the World Press Freedom Index, and it's likely to crater to the bottom of next year's index, no, following the February 1 coup that has, in the words of RSF, set Myanmar's journalists back 10 years. No, after rising 20 places in the World Press Freedom Index between 2013 and 2017, an upward trajectory that reflected its partial emergence from decades of direct military dictatorship, the country's journalists have once again been forced underground amid a systematic campaign of violence, arrest, and censorship. No, hindi lang basta-basta pinapasara yung mga publication, yung mga media outlets, no? They experience physical violence pa, no? Halimbawa, may mga cases na extrajudicial killings, no, in the past. Nitong 2021, no, ang dami nating narinig na balita about cases of extrajudicial killings and other forms of violence against dissenters, hindi lamang mga journalists kundi also activists, no. In fact, the health ministry cited virus misinformation when it ordered the country's core telecoms operators to block access to 221 websites accused of carrying fake news. Although the exact list of sites has not been made public, several news outlets suddenly found they were inaccessible. 221 websites yung binlock, yung pinasara, no? Hindi na sila accessible and available sa mga internet users right now, no? Which is a very big issue kasi syempre, no, alam naman natin sa kasalukuyan kung wala yung mga big media outlets, ang pinagkukuhanan natin ng information ng news ay social media, internet, no? So yung pagpapasa nitong 221 websites na ito, no, allegedly carrying fake news, no, is an attempt, no, i-censor, no, i-filter yung mga information na nakakarating sa mga taong bayan kasi nga dumadami yung dissenters, dumadami yung mga protests, no, dumadami yung mga mass actions, no. And although, no, sabi nga natin hindi pa lumalabas yung exact list of the 221 websites that were blocked, no, forcibly, no, maraming big news outlets na ang nagsabi na bigla silang naging inaccessible, bigla na silang hindi makapag-function, no, or makapag-perform online. And of course, no, we have to highlight, no, although sabi natin na pag-uusapan natin is press freedom in Southeast Asia, natural lang na i-highlight natin yung ating sitwasyon dito sa Pilipinas, no, sa ating sariling bansa, no. Hindi naman lingid sa kalaman natin na hindi nalalayo yung sitwasyon natin dun sa mga iba pang Southeast Asian countries na nabanggit natin, no. There's war against media outlets critical to the Duterte administration, no. And even before the pandemic, nakikita na natin to na maraming media outlets, maraming critics, maraming dissenters ang pinatatahimik, no, at nakakaranas ng political persecution dahil lamang sa pagpapahayag nila ng kritisismo sa kasalukuyan nating administrasyon, no. So in the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte continued to wage a war against media outlets critical of his administration's policies, particularly its violent war on drugs, and now when it comes to his policies, when it comes to his government's, his administration's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Officers down the line of authority have found ways to weaponize COVID-19 directives against targeted groups. Among these are activists and journalists, no? So isa-isahin po natin, no? We'll briefly discuss each of these directives na ideally para raw sa COVID-19, para raw ma-address yung COVID-19 pandemic, no, yung crisis, pero ang totoo, wina-weaponize naman to curtail free speech and press freedom, no. Isa doon is yung, kung naalala natin last year, yung Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. On March 23, as directed by President Duterte, Congress passed into law Republic Act 11469, or the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, giving the president emergency powers that would enable him to quickly respond to the COVID-19 contagion. No, so sa surface level, no, it is a good idea. It is logical, no, na magbigay ng emergency powers sa executive, no, sa pangulo, na para mas mabilis nga naman yung pagresponde sa crisis, no, para mas mabilis yung pagpapatupad at pag-implement ng mga laws, ng mga policies, ng mga programs, no, to address the crisis, no. Kaso there's a specific section, no, in the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, no, na tinatawag na anti-fake news provision. Section 6 of the law penalizes individuals or groups creating, perpetrating, or spreading false information regarding the COVID-19 crisis on social media and other platforms, with imprisonment of 2 months or a fine of not less than 10,000 but not more than 1 million or both, no? Again, sa surface level, it seems logical, no? Halimbawa, yung pagkakaroon ng anti-fake news provision, it seems like it will address the long-standing issue of fake news, no, na matagal nang sinusubukang labanan at itama ng mga journalists, no, ng media, including mga activists and advocates, no. Pero itong fake news provision on the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act can also be used, no, to threaten citizens who air out their grievances and criticisms against the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, kasi hindi malinaw, no, vague and malabo, no, yung definition nito, no, ng fake news, no. Sa madaling sabi, the arbiter of truth is the government. Sila yung mapagpasya kung ano ba yung fake news, ano yung hindi, no, ano ba yung fact, ano ba yung false information, no. Kumbaga, napakadaling maging subjective, no, napakadaling magpasya kung sino yung gustong parusahan, kasi it's also easy for them, no, to say, no, or to identify a piece of information, social media post, for instance, as fake news. At kung naalala po natin, no, sa mga binabalita nung nakaraang taon, both online at ng mga kilalang media outlets, so merong mga social media personalities, mga influencers, mga artista, mga activists, mga organizations, at kahit mga normal na mamayan, yung in-interrogate, no, pinatawag sa NBI, halimbawa, no, pinuntahan ng kapulisan sa kanilang mga bahay dahil lamang sa kanilang Facebook posts about the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Kagaya halimbawa nito nakita natin sa picture, pasensya na hindi ko ma-recall yung kanyang pangalan, no, pero ito ay isang OFW na nag-post patungkol sa kakulangan, no, ng pamahalaan when it comes to the COVID-19 response, no. Sinasabi niya na maraming flaws yung response, and at the same time, no, na hindi tama yung approach, na yung militaristic approach na ginagawa ng ating government. Kung naalala po natin during the first stage of the community quarantines, to tapos sa tulong ng Department of Labor and Employment, no, ay binantaan nila itong OFW na matanggal sa trabaho, na ipapatanggal nila sa trabaho at papauwi nila sa Pilipinas dahil lamang sa isang Facebook post, no, naglalahad ng opinyon ng isang mamamayan, no, patungkol doon sa response ng pamahalaan sa ongoing crisis, na parte naman ng kanyang karapatan, parte ng kanyang freedom of expression, no. In May naman, the government refused to renew the franchise of the country's largest TV broadcaster, ABS-CBN, for its critical reporting on Duterte and his government. Maalala natin, simula pa lamang ng termino ni President Duterte, palagi na niya sinasabi, no, na may galit siya sa ABS-CBN dahil daw masyado daw critical sa kanya, no. As simple as yung hindi pag-air ng mga commercials niya when he was still a candidate, no, ay naging talaga, no, kumbaga nagtanim talaga siya ng galit sa ABS-CBN. Although kiniklaim, no, ng Congress, kiniklaim ng administration ni Duterte na wala daw kinalaman dito ng hindi pagbibigay ng franchise, no. Hindi natin maihihiwalay yung issue na yon, kasi the House Committee, no, the House Committee on Legislative Franchises, nung dinenay nila yung ABS-CBN sa kanilang application for a new franchise, ay ongoing pa yung mga hearings, no? And its license to broadcast its television radio programs was revoked even while the company's franchise was still under deliberation by the Philippine Congress, no? Technically, hindi pa oras, no, para mag-stop yung airing, no. Ongoing pa yung deliberation para sa application for a new franchise, pero bigla na silang ni-require, no, bigla na silang nagbaba ng order to stop na nga, no, yung to go off air na nga, no, yung ABS-CBN. And alam natin, no, malaking malaking epekto nito, no, sa press freedom sa Pilipinas, kasi yung ABS-CBN isa sa pinakamalaking istasyon na meron tayo sa ating bansa, no. Ito yung istasyon na nakakarating sa iba't ibang sulok ng Pilipinas. Halimbawa kapag may bagyo, no, ito yung istasyon na naghahatid ng mga updates sa ating mga kababayan patungkol sa weather, patungkol sa mga baha, patungkol sa mga natural calamities, no. So hindi lang basta yung karapatan na maglahad ng kritisismo yung tinanggal, no, nung nag-off-air yung ABS-CBN, kundi tinanggalan din ng access sa public information yung mga kababayan natin, no, na nasa yung sinasabi nating mga far-flung areas. Halimbawa, yung mga lugar na kadalasan ay hindi naabot ng mga maliit na TV or radio station, so hindi naabot ng internet. And of course, no, despite resounding opposition, President Duterte enacted into law the Republic Act 11479 in July 2020. Progressive groups hold a protest a day after the signing. Ito po yung tinatawag natin na Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020, which the Senate passed in February and the House of Representatives following suit. It effectively repealed the Human Security Act of 2007. No? So itong Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020, it expanded the powers, no, available to law enforcement agents to go after terrorists by providing a longer period of surveillance, no, and it allowed the Anti-Terrorism Council to bypass court authorization for the arrests and designation of terrorists. Sa madaling sabi, is the Anti-Terrorism Council, no, na mapagpasya sino ba ang terorista para sa kanila, ano ba ang terorismo para sa kanila, at hindi na rin kailangan dumaan pa, no, sa mahabang proseso sa korte. Hindi na kailangan, no, na ipagpaalam pa yung pagsusurveillance, no, hindi na dadaan sa due process. So madaling sabi, no, napakalawak na kapangyarihan na meron ng Anti-Terrorism Council, kasi una, silang papasya sino bang terorista, ano ba ang terorismo, at madali na lang para sa kanila mag-conduct ng surveillance, no, at hindi na nila kailangan dumaan pa sa due process. They can bypass na at court, no. So para mas maunawaan natin, let's briefly discuss, no, ano nga ba yung terrorism para sa Anti-Terrorism Act, no, sino nga ba ang terrorista, no. So this law poses a danger to freedom of the media and the freedom of expression by providing an open-ended basis for the prosecuting speech. No, its definitions of acts of terrorism remain vague and open to interpretation. Once this, whether who is or who is not a suspected terrorist is left to interpretation, activists and ordinary citizens raising concerns about the Philippine government can be subjected to warrantless arrest and imprisonment. No, at ito nga pong Anti-Terrorism Act, no, ilan sa mga provision nito ay una, persons accused of committing terrorism can be detained without any warrant of arrest for 14 days and can be later extended to as much as 10 additional days. No? So even without a warrant, no, pwede kang hulihin na lang ng mga opisyal ng Anti-Terrorism Council, no, at sabihin na i-detain ka namin kasi ikaw ay pinaghinalaan naming terorista. Walang due process, walang warrant of arrest, pwede kang i-detain sa loob ng 14 days, no, at pwede pa itong ma-extend hanggang 10 additional days, no. And police and military can conduct a 60-day surveillance on suspected terrorists, which may be later extended to 30 additional days, no. Kagaya na ba kanina yung surveillance, hindi kailangan ipagpaalam sa korte, no, hindi kailangan dumaan sa due process, basta pinagsususpetsahan daw nila na terorista, pwede na sila agad mag-conduct ng 60-day surveillance. Pag sinabi mong surveillance, kasama dito halimbawa yung pagmamanman, no, yung pag-imbestiga dun sa individual, yung pagsunod sa individual sa kanyang daily activity, kasama din dito yung pag-tap halimbawa ng mga means of communication kagaya ng cellphone, telephone, and kasama na rin dito, no, yung sa mga social media accounts, no, if available, halimbawa kung yung under surveillance ay isang social media personality, no. And again, no, dangerous yung definition ng terrorism, no, ng Anti-Terrorism Act, kasi ang totoo, no, hindi naman talaga ito tumutukoy sa terorismo, no. Ang tinutukoy lang nito ay mga tao na nagsasalita, no, laban sa pamahalaan, mga tao nagpapahayag ng kanilang opinyon at kritisismo sa kanilang pamahalaan. No? In fact, ito nakita natin na infographic, ito ay pinublish sa isang Facebook page ng isang police station sa city of Batak. No? At sinasabi dito, sino daw ba yung mga terorista? No? Sinasabi na if you cause damage or attempt to cause damage to government properties or facilities, you are a terrorist. No? May nasira ka halimbawa na gamit o pasilidad no sa isang government property, no, donating or helping relief drives that aren't government or state recognized. No, halimbawa ikaw ay parte ng organization na tumutulong sa mga marginalized communities, nagpupunta kayo sa mga kabundukan, sa mga communities, nagbibigay kayo ng relief goods, halimbawa, no, terorista ka na nun. Participating in a rally or any movement that can cause a serious risk to public safety without defining ano ba ibig sabihin ng serious risk to public safety, and posting, writing, sharing, and or retweeting posts even means related to terrorist activities. And again, no, malabo yung definition ng ano ba yung terrorist activities. So kadalasan ng mga nako-question, ng mga na-interrogate, yung mga social media users, mga influencers, mga personalities na nagpo-post ng criticisms nila, nagpo-post halimbawa ng memes, no, or sometimes even just plain and simple post, no, na kino-question halimbawa yung government funding, kino-question yung kawalan ng mass testing before, yung kino-question yung tagal, no, ng vaccination, no, yung mga ganito lahat ay posibleng magamit against us kahit nang totoo, no, lalong-lalo na yung huli, no, at yung participating in a rally or any movement ay parte lang naman ng ating freedom of expression, no. So itong anti-terrorism ang isa talaga ito sa pinaka naging kasabay, no, nung Bayanihan to Heal Us One Act, lalo-lalo yung fake news provision nito at itong Anti-Terrorism Act. Ito yung talagang naging threat, no, sa freedom of expression ng mga Pilipino since the COVID-19 pandemic started. Kasama rito of course yung threat, no, sa mga media outlets, sa mga media outfits, even online, no, dahil lamang sa kanilang pag-exercise ng kanilang kalayaan at karapatan na magpahayag, no. I think more than 30 minutes na ako, no. So hindi na po natin isa-isahin, no. Ito ay mga halimbawa lang naman ng mga red tagging attacks na ibinunga ng Anti-Terrorism Act, no. When we see red tagging, ito yung pagbabrand mo sa mga individuals, sa mga personalities, sa mga organizations bilang mga terorista, bilang mga kaaway ng estado dahil lamang sila ay vocal, no, doon sa kanilang kritisismo sa pamahalaan, kikriticize nila yung mga kakulangan, yung mga anomalies, yung corruption, and yung kawalan ng efficient at effective na response sa pandemya, no. And at ilan sa mga biktima nito ay mga progressive organizations kagaya ng Bagong Alyansa Makabayan or Bayan, and kasama rito ay yung Gabriela, Anak Bayan, both ay merong youth organization, no. So imagine kung active ka lang sa youth organization sa loob ng iyong university, no, na active ka lang sa mga isyong panlipunan, ina-exercise mo lang yung freedom of expression mo kasi alam mo na bilang Pilipino at bilang kabataan ay may boses ka dapat, no, may karapatan ka, no, na magpahayag, no, kasi ikaw no, kagaya ng lahat, no, nagbabayad ng buwis, no, at ikaw nagbibigay ng kapangyarihan at otoridad dito sa mga opisyal na ito na nakaupo sa pwesto, no. Other red tagging attacks, no, ay nakita natin sa mga sikat na personalities, halimbawa si Angel Locsin, si Nalay Sobrano, si former Miss Universe Catriona Gray, no, dahil lamang sobrang vocal nila about their advocacy against violence against women at sa kanilang mga comments, no, hindi sila natakot na mag-post about their inquiries, no, about their concerns, no, bakit ganito yung nangyayari sa Pilipinas, no, even them ay hindi nakaligtas sa red tagging because of the Anti-Terrorism Act. And of course, no, sa huli, ang kailangan natin tanongin ay paano ba natin itataguyod at ipaglalaban yung ating free speech? Kasama dito, of course, yung press freedom. See, decades after the ratification of the 1987 Constitution and even beyond, freedom of expression remains and will always be a necessary condition for a strong and vibrant democracy. It has to be fought vigilantly, regardless of the cost. So tayo bilang mga simpleng mga estudyante, bilang mga kabataan, ano ba yung pwede nating gawin, no? Ito po ay particular, no, sa sitwasyon natin dito sa Pilipinas. At sabi nga natin, isa sa mga pinaka nakikita nating pressing issue, no, na sumusubok or nagsa-challenge sa ating freedom of expression at sa press freedom ay yung Anti-Terrorism Act, no? So una-una, we can publicly show our opposition to the Anti-Terrorism Act through tweets, posts, blogs, photographs, memes, hashtags, etc. Any social media platform, kasi dito tayo active, i-utilize natin yung platform na lagi nating ginagamit. Yung platform, no, na kung saan, halimbawa, tayo ay nasa province or kaya naman hindi tayo nakakalabas na ating mga bahay, hindi tayo nakakasali dun sa mga protests, sa mga mass actions, no, sa labas, no. Pwede natin gamitin yung social media. Maraming platforms, no, kung saan pwede natin ipahayag yung ating opposition sa Anti-Terrorism Act at yung ating kagustuhan, no, na makiisa dun sa ating sa pagtataguyod ng press freedom and ng freedom of expression. We can also initiate or join virtual or real protests, petitions, virtual or real, no, public demonstrations and other forms of mass actions, no. And we can hold or join discussion on free speech and Anti-Terrorism Act within our families, our friends, our communities, or groups. Kaya ng ginagawa natin ngayon, no, sa loob ng ating organisasyon, sa loob ng ating pamantasan, pinag-uusapan natin specifically ano ba yung tinutukoy natin pag sinabi nating freedom of expression, sinabi nating press freedom, gaano ba ito kahalaga at paano natin ito itataguyod. We can also file petitions and cases kung tayo ay updated po sa balita, no, dahil sa mga petisyon to declare Anti-Terrorism Act as unconstitutional nitong Webes, no, after series of deliberation ay dineklara ng ating Korte Suprema na yung dalawang probisyon ng Anti-Terrorism Act ay unconstitutional. Although we can consider this as a small victory, no, hindi pa rin dito tapos yung laban, of course, kasi kung familiar tayo, no, dun sa naging resulta, no, dalawang provision lang naman yung dineclare as unconstitutional. Una yung Section 4 and then yung Section 25. Yung Section 24 ay tumutukoy doon sa mga acts, no, that are considered as an act of terrorism, no. Sinasabi ng Korte Suprema na medyo maluwag daw, no, or medyo broad daw yung standard. Specifically, ang dineclare as unconstitutional ay yung parte na nagsasabi na when you do something, when you perform an act na nag-cause ng serious risk to public safety, ikaw ay terrorist na. Kasi nga, vague, no, or too broad yung definition ng public safety at ano yung mga serious risk to public safety, no. And we can also use, no, our in line with the first one, we can also use our creative talents to compose and sing songs, write scripts, articles, act in plays or dramas, and we can also utilize all our other talents. So ngayon, halimbawa, palagi nakikita, ang daming gumagawa ng mga TikTok about na may political content, no? If masaya tayo doon, yun yung hilig natin, pwede natin gamitin yun, no? Magtalakay tayo ng mga isyong palipunan kagaya nito, no? Kasi alam natin, yung mga kabataan may tendency na tamarin at mabore sa mga articles, no, sa mga balita, no. Pero kung alam natin yon, no, gamitin po natin yung social media, gumawa tayo ng vlogs, gumawa tayo ng mga TikTok, no, na nag-educate ng mga kapwa natin kabataan. And of course, no, tatandaan natin, no, huwag tayo matakot na magpahayag, no. So always defend our freedom of expression, and we should always defend press freedom, no, kasi again ito ay isang essential na elemento ng demokrasya, no. At ulitin ko lang sinabi ko kanina, no, sa panahon ng crisis, no, it is imperative for a government to listen to its people, to effectively respond to their needs, and to effectively address the crisis at hand, no. Kung hindi tayo magsasalita, kung hindi tayo magpapahayag, no, ay hindi magtatagumpay, no, yung demokrasya, no, at hindi makakarating sa ating mga opisyal, sa ating mga leader, kung ano ba yung ating mga pangangailangan at kung ano ba yung ating mga kritisismo sa kanila. Yun lang po, at maraming salamat.
Wow, wag matakot magpahayag, mga napakagandang salita. Thank you very much, Miss Magtalas. You indeed reminded us of what rights we have in terms of giving our opinions. This reminded me of what I learned from our politics and media course na ang media nga daw is a powerful tool that shapes our mind and affects our perspective about things, particularly politics. Kaya naman nararapat lang talaga na mas matuldukan pa sana ang mga bagay na sumusubok sa ating press freedom, lalo na dito sa Southeast Asia.
That is right, Alondra. It is also our responsibility as citizens of our region to be vigilant in assessing fake and what is legitimate news, because this will help to strengthen the press integrity that we have. At this point of time, we will have an open forum with Ms. Magdalas. But before we start, let us first listen to a musical interlude to be given by Mr. Jerome Ventimiglia, a third-year common media student of Centro Escolar University.
Wake up to a new day, but it don't feel that new. Same faces around me with the same point of view. Everything is perfect and everything's okay. Just swallow your lies and let your emotions fade. But my heart won't be quiet. I feel a change. No more black and white. This life's too colorful, beautiful. Don't know what lies ahead, but I'm ready now. It's time. Gotta go, gotta get up and leave my fear behind. Nothing left over here can stick around. My dreams are loud and my heart's wide awake. And all I know is I'm not meant to be silent. I'm not meant to be silent. Wake up to a new voice telling me to where to go. It sounds like I got no choice but to keep on this road. Got my own opinion, my own words to say. Got my own vision, so no I can say there's no looking back now, 'cause I feel a change. I'm ready now, it's time. Gotta go, gotta get up and leave my fear behind. Nothing left over here can stick around. My dreams are loud and my heart's wide awake. And all I know is I'm not meant to be silent. No more black and white. This life's too colorful, oh beautiful. Don't know what lies ahead, but now it's time. Leave my fear behind. Whoa, I'm ready now. It's time, yeah. And leave my fear to be silent.
What a dazzling performance. Thank you very much, Mr. Ventimiglia. We'd also like to acknowledge the presence of some of our professors. Professor Christian Sorongon, Professor Rolly Gasello, Professor Ruth Santos, and Professor Marilu Yap. Thank you very much for attending today's event. Ladies and gentlemen, we may now start with our open forum.
If you have any questions, just raise your hand, and as we call your name, feel free to open your mic and ask Ms. Magdalas your question. Or you may also type your questions in the chat box below and we will read it for you.
Again, you may raise your hand if you want to ask a question to Ms. Magdalas. Okay. For the first question, may I call on Mr. Renz Fernandez, who is raising his hand to open his mic now and ask our speaker.
Hello po, good evening po Miss Magtala. So, ang question ko po is, ano po yung naging parang lapses sa part po ng ating government when it comes to upholding the rule of law and yung protecting po ng ating mga journalists, and bilang isa pong isang union ng mga bansa, ano po kaya yung pwede nilang matutunan sa iba pang union ng mga bansa, like for example, the European Union, sa pag-uphold ng rule of law and sa pagprotekta po ng kanilang mga media personalities or yung pong ating mga mamamahayag?
As for the lapses, siguro technically, kung titingnan kasi natin halimbawa yung ating constitution, yung ating mga batas, progresibo naman yung language eh. Talagang nire-recognize naman yung ating human rights, katulad na ating freedom of expression. Ang pinaka-problema talaga, ay yung implementasyon at yung pagkilala dito mismo na ating pamahalaan, Kasi at the end of the day, palaging nauuna yung pansarili ng interest. Palagi na una yung kanilang agenda, halimbawa to retain their power, to retain their authority, o kaya naman ay mas pahabain pa ito. So kung pagdating sa mga batas, sa mga sa konstitusyon natin halimbawa, sa totoo lang dapat ay sapat na. Ang mas dapat nating questionin ay yung mga tao, yung mga opisyal na nagbabantay dito, yung dapat nagsisiguro nito. At doon naman sa pangalawang tanong na, kung ano ba yung dapat natin matutunan sa ibang mga regional organizations halimbawa or mga international bodies. Kagaya na bagay ko kanina, kinikilala naman ng ASEAN Charter, meron nga tayong tinatawag na ASEAN Human Rights Declaration, at kinikilala din po dito yung freedom of expression natin, yung free speech natin, at yung press freedom. Kaso, kung papansinin natin, sa kasaysayan ng ASEAN, as an organization, as an association, ang palagian nito kung focus kasi is economic prosperity, yung mutual economic development, laging patungkol sa mga businesses, kung paanong magsasanib pwersa, yung mga bansa sa rehiyon, to achieve economic growth and development, At dahil dito, kadalasan na pag-iiwanan yung ibang mga aspeto kagaya na ating civil liberties and human rights, kagaya na ating freedom of expression. So siguro ang kailangan gawin at the regional level is masiguro yung balance. Masiguro yung balance when it comes to the policies and programs we implemented within the region, na hindi pwedeng pang-ekonomiya lang palagi yung focus, kasi hindi ngunit umangat yung ating ekonomiya, kagaya na sabi natin kanina, in the last 5 decades, our region has emerged as the 7th largest economy in the world, Pero kasabay naman ito ay kumbaga lagapak naman, o bumababa naman yung estado ng civil liberties and human rights, So kailangan masiguro na kumbaga inklusibo yung mga polisiya at the regional level, na lahat ng aspeto ay sinusuri at ina-address.
Thank you very much po. And for the next question, please turn on your mic now, Miss Minya.
Good afternoon po, Ms. Magtalas. A question ko lang po is kung meron din po bang problema kaya sa tao na supporter ng government kung bakit nag-proliferate yung ganitong klaseng culture?
Sorry, pakiulit po yung tanong.
Kung may problem din po kaya sa mga tao na supporter ng government kung bakit nag-proliferate yung ganitong culture?
Ang pinakamalaking problema ay edukasyon. Kakulangan ng edukasyon, no? Hindi natin dapat halimbawa kung ito madalas kasi itong mangyayari sa social media, no? Laging merong mga nagdedebate, merong nag-aaway, no? Nagpapagalingan palagi kasi yung isa alam niya kung ano yung tama, no? Alam niya kung ano yung dapat na maging political stance, no? At dahil dito na-alienate lang niya yung kabilang partido na sumusuport dun sa sinasabi natin halimbawa mga pulisiya ng pamahalaan na may tendency mag-violate ng human rights, no? Kailangan natin alalahanin, no, na education yung issue, no? Kasi malaking parte na ating populasyon na hindi nakakapag-aral at halimbawa hindi sila maalam sa batas. Hindi nila alam yung mga karapatang pantao nila, no? Hindi nila alam kung ano yung mga pulisiya na dapat sinusunod, ano yung mga standards na dapat sinusunod ng mga halimbawa ng mga kandidatong tumatakbo, no, sa election, no. Kaya misguided sila, kaya may tendency, no, na magkaroon sila ng perspective, magkaroon sila ng political stance, no, na hindi pabor sa mas nakakarami, hindi pabor sa sa madaling sabi, hindi for the common good. Kasi nga, limited yung perspective na meron sila, no. So hindi natin sila dapat sinisisi, no. Instead, kapag meron tayong nakilala, halimbawa, no, meron tayong na-encounter yung isang tao na sabihin natin hardcore talaga, no, na talagang naniniwala doon sa isang pulisiya, kahit na alam naman natin, no, alam natin yung mga facts, alam natin yung mga evidence, alam natin na hindi just na nagkukos ng human rights violations itong policy na ito, pero bakit niya sinusupport? Imbes na magalit tayo, imbes na i-alienate natin sila, no, imbes na magmarunong tayo, no, dapat tayo yung bumaba sa kanilang level, alalahanin natin, no, na hindi lahat ay may access sa edukasyon, no, hindi lahat ay may resources, no, na maaaring gamitin to critically examine the issues affecting them and their communities, no. So kung tayo yung may ganong pribilehiyo, kung tayo yung may ganong karanasan at ganong klaseng impormasyon, ibahagi natin sa kanila. No? Kasi at the end of the day, it's not about us, no, it's about the future of the country, no. So matuto tayong magpakumbaba at kilalanin na edukasyon, no, yung problema, doon tayo nagkukulang sa aspetong yon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we have another student who is raising his hand. Let's have Mir Tila.
Good afternoon, ma'am. First, gusto ko lang po sana i-share na I'm from Mindanao. I'm from a war-torn area. And gusto ko lang sana itanong kung ano yung mali sa pag-red tag sa red talaga mismo na organization or pula, or if yung red tagging ba na term ay nag-evolve na into nagkaroon na siya ng ibang meaning compared sa talagang definition niya, yung Cold War definition niya.
Sa kasalukuyan kasi, no, yung red tagging ay kumbaga loosely na lang na ginagamit, no. Ina-apply na ito halimbawa kagaya na bagay ko mga examples kanina, even in TV personalities, even in social media influencers, no, na simply because they're airing out their grievances, simply because they're asking questions or posting their criticisms, no, about the government's response to COVID-19 pandemic. Naka-question na sila. Halimbawa, may pagkakataon na sinabi, no, ni Parlade kay Liza Soberano na kung hindi na itigil yung kanyang pakikipag-alliance halimbawa sa Gabriela, ay baka matulad siya doon sa mga napatay ng mga NPA, no. Ideally, hindi dapat ganito, no? Hindi dapat basta-basta na red tag, no? Pero siguro tama rin yung sinabi mo, no, na parang nag-evolve na kasi yung konsepto, no, na anyone ngayon ay vulnerable na, no, anyone right now, no, ay maaari ng makaranas ng political persecution. Kumbaga, mas madali na kasi mas accessible na rin, no, halimbawa siguro dahil sa presence din natin sa social media.
And we also received questions po from our chat box. So for the first question, we have from Miss Zarina. Sabi niya, good day po, ma'am. This is my question po. Is it really credible to use TikTok videos when it comes to references? Because they sometimes romanticize the people involved in that information in order to gather sympathy and be favor to them. And to that platform, seems like everyone is getting toxic.
Siyempre, hindi po pinaka-ideal na gamitin yung TikTok, no? Binanggit ko lang siya kanina na suggestion kasi bilang mga kabataan, alam naman natin na maraming youth talaga ang active dito. At pwede naman natin siya gamitin responsibly, no? Halimbawa, may mga academics na gumagamit ng TikTok kasi alam nila, no, na aside from being an educator, halimbawa, aside from being an advocate outside social media, ay mas malaki maging reach nila kapag nag-active sila sa TikTok, no? At they use it responsibly. Halimbawa, sinasite nila yung mga references at objective sila, no, sa pagpapahayag ng mga impormasyon, no, na sinishare at nilalahad nila, no. So, hindi, of course, no, linawin lang natin, hindi tayo dapat umaasa sa mga ganitong platforms. Pero syempre, ni-recognize natin na meron din silang power, no? Kasi nga, nasa henerasyon tayo, nasa panahon tayo na milyon-milyong mga taong active sa social media. So, bakit natin hindi ito i-utilize, no? Basta siguraduhin lang natin na we're using it responsibly, no? Na nagpa-fact check muna tayo bago mag-share at bago mag-post.
Thank you so much, Ms. Magtalas. I saw a student who raised her hand earlier. Ms. Giovanna Nesas, would you like to ask something?
Yes po. Good afternoon po, Ms. Magtalas. My question is, yun po bang polarization of media po ay may effect po kung bakit po may repression? Katulad po dito sa Pilipinas po, those media outlet na nasa critical government po na pinupuntirya po ng Estado.
Ay, nakamute pala ako. Sorry. Pwede po bang pakiulit yung tanong? Medyo nag-lag kasi sa akin eh.
Yes po, sure po. Yun po bang polarization of media po ay may effect po kung bakit po may repression? Katulad po sa Pilipinas po, those media outlets po na nasa critical government po na pinupuntirya po ng Estado.
Of course, it's a factor, no? Kasi evident naman yun eh sa mga media outlets na meron tayo. Halimbawa, ang daming media outlets na media outfits na talagang malinaw yung kanilang political stance, no? Sa kahit anong balita, sa kahit anong isyong pinag-uusapan, makita mo na talagang kung saan sila leaning, no? And karamihan sa kanila, halimbawa, leaning towards, of course, no, dun sa side na nagki-criticize sa pamahalaan, no? Pero hindi naman natin masasabi kasi na ito ay bias or na ito ay prejudice, no? Kasi ang kanilang inclination ay doon lang naman sa katotohanan. Kumbaga doon sila biased sa truth, no? Leaning sila doon sa mamamayan, no? Doon sa kanilang mga mambabasa dun sa kanilang audience. So, at malaking factor ito kung bakit lalong lumalala yung pagpunterya sa kanila, no, sabi mo nga, no, ng estado, no, kasi kumbaga alam na ng administration kung sino sa mga media outlets yung supportive sa kanila, alam na nila kung sino yung kailangan nilang iwasan o kailangan nilang pagkaingatan, no, para masiguro na hindi mas-smear yung image nila or walang i-report na against them, no. So meron na talagang politics, no. So mas pinalala niya talaga, no, kasi it's easy to identify now, no, yung political stance ng mga media outlets and media outfits. So mas vulnerable na rin sila, mas prone na rin sila sa sinasabi mo nga, no, na pagpunteriya ng estado sa kanilang mga organisasyon, institution, and
Okay po, para naman sa ating second to the last question, this is again from Mr. Fernandez. Sabi niya, nakaka-apekto po kaya yung pagiging parte ng Global South or Third World ng Southeast Asia kung bakit nagkakaroon ng repression on media?
Anong exact aspect ng pagiging third world country natin yung tingin mo may correlation sa repression of media? Para yun yung ma-address natin, Fernandez.
Hello po. Yung pong inaano ko po kasi ito is yung pagiging ano po natin from kaya po siguro tayo nasa third world politics pa rin po kasi ngayon most of the Southeast Asia ay nanggaling po kasi tayo sa dictatorship. Alam naman po natin na most of the Southeast Asian countries ay may history po ng dictatorship kahit po monarchy pa po yan or republic.
Okay, no? Tama yung yung foundation ng idea mo, no? Kasi meron tayong kasaysayan ng diktatorya, kasaysayan ng kolonisasyon at imperialismo, no? At ang mga bansa na may ganitong kasaysayan, kumbaga, ay sanay na magpalipin, no? Sanay na maging sunod-sunuran, no? At itong mga opisyal natin sa pamahalaan, no? Kadalasan ayaw nila yung kino-question, ayaw nila yung kini-criticize, ayaw nila yung sinasabi mo sa kanila kung anong tama, kung ano yung nakakabuti para sa mamayan, no? And may tendency yung ating publiko, no, may tendency yung, halimbawa dito sa Philippines, may tendency yung mamayang Pilipino na tanggapin na lamang kung ano yung sinasabi, kung ano yung inuutos, no? Dahil nga, no, siguro, kumbaga, parang embedded na sa kultura nating mga Pilipino dahil sa ating kasaysayan na sanay tayo na tagasunod lamang, no? Sanay tayo na dinidiktahan, no? Pero sa kabila no, malinaw din naman sa ating konstitusyon, malinaw din naman sa ating mga batas at malinaw din naman no sa ilang parte ng ating kasaysayan, halimbawa yung EDSA Revolution, no? Dalawang EDSA Revolution yun, no? Malinaw din naman na meron din tayong kakayahan na i-exercise yung ating democratic rights, na meron tayong kakayahan na i-exercise yung ating kalayaan at karapatan na magpahayag, no? So historically malaking factor no yung experiences natin, yung different periods of colonization, no, of dictatorship, no, kung bakit ganito yung sistema na meron tayo in our country, halimbawa, no, and katulad din sa iba pang Southeast Asian countries. Pero hindi ibig sabihin nito na makukulong na tayo dito, no, kasi malinaw din naman, again, no, katulad ng sinabi ko, malinaw din naman sa history natin na alam natin how to exercise our rights, no? Alam natin kung paano gamitin yung ating karapatan, yung ating kapangyarihan bilang mamamayan sa isang demokrasya.
And for the last question po, this is from Professor Rolly Gaselo. Sabi niyo po, the libel law exists for a reason, but with Energy Secretary Cusi suing 5 media news outlets for their report about Malampaya, do you think libel law is more of a hindrance to press freedom? How is it different kung ang libel ay against journalists?
Of course, no, hindi absolute ang freedom of expression, ang free speech, ang press freedom, no. In fact, under the Article 19 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which Southeast Asian countries, katulad ng Pilipinas, ay state parties, no, the freedom of expression carries restrictions such as respect for the rights or reputations of others, national security, public order, public health, and public morals. At ilan dun sa mga mandatory limitations to freedom of expression include laws against defamation, no, or libel, yung sinasabi natin sa Filipino na paninirang puri, no? At ideally, no, sa ideal na mundo, no, walang masama sa pagkakaroon ng ganitong limitasyon. Siyempre, kailangan masiguro natin na habang ina-exercise ng isang individual, no, ng isang organisasyon, yung kanilang karapatan na magpahayag, ay walang natatapakan na karapatan ng iba, no? Pero siguro kailangan nating tingnan yung konteksto ng ating bansa kung saan kadalasan yung mga laws, no? Halimbawa, yung COVID-19 directives are weaponized, no, to curtail free speech and press freedom. Kumbaga, kadalasan ginagamit yung mga ganitong batas, no, ini-interpret sa paraan, no, na mapipigilan, masasensor, ma-restrict or ma-repress yung mga media outlets, yung mga institutions, kagaya ng mga journalists, no, sa pagpapahayag nila ng paglalahad nila ng information, pagpapahayag nila ng comments, ng opinions, ng criticism, no. So again, sa ideal na mundo, walang problema sa mandatory limitations, no? Sinisiguro lang nito na habang ine-exercise na isa yung kanyang karapatan ay walang natatapakan na karapatan ng ibang individual, pero mahalaga po yung konteksto na meron tayo, no? In the Philippines, halimbawa, matagal na nating no-observe, of course, hindi lang naman during the COVID-19 pandemic, na maraming direktiba, maraming mga polisiya ang nagagamit, na-weaponize, no? Para patahimikin, no? Para mapacify yung mga critics, yung mga dissenters, no? So, ang kailangan natin ayusin ay yung system. Halimbawa, yung justice system natin, no? Specifically, para masiguro na hindi ito na-weaponize, na hindi ito nagagamit for their own interests, no? Para sa sarili nilang political agenda.
Wow! And ladies and gentlemen, that ends our open forum regarding Ms. Magtala's talk about ASEAN press freedom. Grabe no, partner, napakalaman ng ating intellectual discourse ngayong araw na ito.
That is right, partner. Learning about our press is very important, lalo-lalo na papalapit na ang eleksyon.
Exactly. Kaya naman laking pasasalamat natin sa TSS for having an event like this. And we are extremely happy and grateful to all our participants who are here with us today.
And with that, thank you very much, Ms. Magtalas, for opening our eyes with regards to the current situation and the status of our press freedom here in Southeast Asia. Before we continue with our program, let us first have a photo opportunity with Ms. Magtalas. May I request everyone to open their camera for our photo op.
Okay. Hello po. Open na lang po natin ang ating camera. One. Wait lang po, hintayin po natin yung iba. Okay po. Okay po, kung ready na po. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay po, wait lang po. Isa pa po. Okay po. 1, 2, 3. Okay po. Thank you po. Thank you po.
And to award the certificate of appreciation to our dear speaker, let us call on the program head of the Political Science Program and the advisor of the Political Science Society, Professor Julius O. De Leon.
Good afternoon to all of you. I will now read the citation for Lyra Magtalas, our resource speaker. Certificate. Laki-lakihan nga. Central Escolar University, Political Science Society awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Professor Lyra Magtalas, the resource speaker for this ASEAN Press Freedom, held in this 11th day of December 2021 via Zoom, signed by Mr. Renz Fernandez, the president of the Political Science Society, yours truly, Mr. Julius De Leon, the program head, and Dr. Maria Rita De Lucas, the Dean of the School of Education, Liberal Arts, Music, and Social Work. So, Ms. Professor Lyra Magtalas, thank you very much for sharing your expertise and your time, precious time, for our dear political science students. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Leon and Ms. Magtalas. May you both continue to inspire the students and the members of Political Science Society of your hard work and expertise.
That's right. And speaking of inspiration, today prominent political figures in our current government have prepared video messages for our Political Science Society members to give us motivation in our endeavors. The first message will be coming from one of the senators of the 18th Congress of the Republic of the Philippines, the Honorable Panfilo Lacson.
And the next message will be coming from Honorable Leila de Lima, to be read by Maria Lee Serenilia and Honorable Francis Kiko Pangilinan, Senators of the 18th Congress of the Republic of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all watch these.
University, Political Science. Sa lahat ng miyembro at opisyal ng Centro Escolar University, Political Science Society, sa student leaders ng inyong council, sa lahat ng kabataang eskolar, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Whenever I speak before a young and promising crowd like this one, I always emphasize the importance of our inalienable rights in this nation. These rights, as I come to believe, make our lives worth living. I speak of no less than our freedom of speech, our right to hold and express our opinions, and our right to know. To suppress the rights of the people who speak their minds is like forsaking a nation to a state of doom. This is no exaggeration. Reflections from our history would tell us that freedom of speech is an indispensable condition for nearly every other form of freedom. Nakasaad ang kalayaan sa pananalita sa katipunan ng makakarapatang pangtao at bawat mamamayan ng bansa. Sa ilalim ng Section 4 ng ating saligang batas, hindi dapat magpatibay ng batas na nagbabawas sa kalayaan sa pananalita, pagpapahayag o ng pamamahayag o sa karapatan ng mga taong bayan na mapayapang magkatipon at magpetisyon sa pamahalaan upang ilahad ang kanilang mga karaingan. This is the very pillar of our democracy. And the youth, such as yourselves, are the movers of our democratic values. With the advent of technology comes the greatest potential to make meaningful exercise of these rights. Not in our long history can we mobilize, influence, and organize through such transformational social media movements we have in the recent past. In 2013, we witnessed how the million people march in light of the pork barrel scam snowballed on Twitter and Facebook, a show of emotional indignation, largely of young Filipinos demanding accountability from our government. Truth is, you have promising political attitudes and beliefs. The primary actors in promoting diversity, gender equality, freedom of information, and environmental protection, among others. Gayunman, kasabay ng pagbabago sa forma at anyo ng komunikasyon, maigting din ang paglaganap ng forma at anyo ng pamamaraan na humahadlang sa karapatan sa malayang pamamahayag. In my long years in public service, I have come to witness how our people have repeatedly lost trust in our public institutions, in our public officials, in our government. I am sure you share the same sentiments, being the generation that has been perpetually caught in the crossfire of social, political, and economic commotion. I know this for sure, having witnessed and fought in the front lines of high-level scandals in the government that have eroded public trust and weakened the integrity of public service. In some unfortunate twist of fate, I also found myself as the subject of vicious and baseless black media propaganda leveled against my person by those corrupt few and their cohorts who tried to intimidate, if not silence me, for being a staunch critic of corruption. Decades have passed. Most of those who unjustly wronged me came forward and recanted and apologized for their false claims. In fact, a major daily even published its public apology. Even all these years, one thing remains. We need to be vigilant and discerning. We have to guard the freedom of speech and of the press from the confines of compromise, convention, and bandwagon. I urge you, should you dissent truthfully against those that corrupt the moral fiber of our society. Should you speak courageously for the voiceless and for the rule of law. Should you protest against disinformation and fake news that hijack our public conversation. And lastly, as we demand for change, we must be the change that we want to be. Cultivate a culture of responsible journalism that raises the level of public discourse and builds on fairness, objectivity, and honesty. With this, I am certain that our demands for a government that restores people's trust will echo across our nation and across time. Mabigat na responsibilidad, ngunit higit kailanman, mas kailangan na palakasin ng mga estudyanteng mamamahayag tulad ninyo ang responsable at makabuluhang boses para sa kabutihan at kaalaman ng bawat Pilipino. Kailangan natin ang utak na may tapang at tapang na may utak. I hope that in pursuit of your collective idealism, you ground yourselves in values that truly last. Values such as competence, courage, and integrity. Again, thank you, and may you have a meaningful discourse.
Good morning, dear members of the CEU Political Science Society, and to all the students who are here with us today. I am grateful and honored to be a part of this event. Having been in incarceration for almost 5 years already, without access to a computer, phone, and internet, I always look forward to the chance to communicate, especially amongst brave young people like you. In your unwavering efforts to fight for freedom of speech and the press, we have hope that truth and justice will prevail in the end. The pandemic provided a more dangerous opportunity for fascists to spread the virus of fear and lies among a population of rendered vulnerable by a life-threatening crisis. Under the pretext of security in a public health emergency, the pandemic was used to intensify crackdowns against government critics and impose control on ordinary people and press freedom across Southeast Asia. We will never forget that the Duterte regime closed down the country's biggest broadcasting network at a time when information on the COVID-19 virus and accountability on the government's crisis response were most needed. The regime, in its unbridled hatred for the truth, also convicted Maria Ressa for cyber libel on June 15, 2020, just 3 months after one of the world's longest lockdowns was imposed. When press freedom is curtailed, it affects how people exercise their rights and how those who violate these rights are held accountable. Duterte has launched an attack against Philippine press, calling them frauds, hypocrites, and corrupt, and then saturates the information corridor with an army of trolls and paid hacks. Government officials openly red tag news organizations and journalists as communist sympathizers under the pretense of no other than the freedom of expression. Our country remains to be one of the most dangerous places in the world to practice journalism, with 21 journalists killed under the Duterte administration. The 21st was Orlando Dondon Dinoy, who was killed in his hometown in Davao del Sur on October 30. I know from personal experience how vicious a tyrannical regime's propaganda machine can be. After I launched a Senate investigation on his murderous war against drugs, the president vowed to destroy me. De Lima, you are finished, he declared at a news conference in Davao City. And overnight, a massive social media campaign turned me into the most vilified woman in the country. Defiance cost me my freedom, and for many others, their lives. And we are all here today because of the defiance of those who, through the darkest moments of martial law, went against powerful forces who attempt to rewrite history, and those who chose to speak against the atrocities committed by this pseudo-dictator. This is a dangerous time for defiance. Pwede naman kayong manahimik kung tutuusin. Mga bata pa naman kayo. Pwede ninyong piliin na hindi makialam. Pero nandito kayo ngayon at pinipiling manindigan. Takot sa katotohanan ang mga diktador. Kahit ang ating pinakamatibay sa dlata ay katotohanan din. I hope to meet you all in better times.
Magandang umaga sa mga dekano, profesor at mag-aaral ng Centro Escolar University. Salamat sa CEU Political Science Society at sa inyong Pangulo, Ginoong Renz Aiden Fernandez, sa pag-imbita sa akin para magsalita tungkol sa napakahalagang paksa ng press freedom o kalayaan sa pamamahayag. Greetings to fellow speaker Ms. Lyra Magtalas ng CEU Manila Lecturer. Several days ago, before today's discussion on the state of press freedom in our country and in the region, a cabinet secretary and a known crony of this administration filed separate libel cases against 7 major news organizations. Sinulat lang ng mga news outfits ang draft complaint na nakapalibot sa questionableng pagbenta ng mga share ng Chevron at ang paglipat ng rights sa Malampaya sa kumpanya ni Dennis Uy. Nagsusupply ng 20% ng ating power requirements ang Malampaya. Kaya naman ang pagbabalita ng mga kaganapang tungkol dito ay nasa interes ng taong bayan. Noong isang araw naman, December 8, binaril at walang awang pinatay ang isang local journalist at kabalin si Jess Malabanan habang nanonood ng TV sa bahay nila sa Sama. Malaki ang papel ni Jess para maisulat ang serye ng mga kwento ng Reuters tungkol sa madugong drug war at nanalo pa ito ng Pulitzer Prize. He is the 22nd journalist to have been killed since President Duterte took office in 2016. It's quite obvious that the assassination and these lawsuits are being employed to silence the media and restrain them from reporting government corruption and repression. The chill is not the December chill, but like it, it's being felt all over. Kinukundina natin ang mga pananakot at pagbabanta, panghaharas at karahasan laban sa mga journalists at media workers. In the last 5.5 years, we have all witnessed the unabated attacks of the administration on media, including the jarring judicial campaign and harassment against Rappler and its CEO, now Nobel Peace Prize awardee Maria Ressa, and the shutdown of ABS-CBN, the country's largest television network, in the middle of the worst health crisis in 100 years in the country. The administration's persecution and harassment of journalists were clearly highlighted in this year's World Press Freedom Index of Reporters Without Borders, where the Philippines ranked 138th out of 180 nations reviewed. This is the 4th year that the Philippines dropped in the ranking that measures this freedom of journalists. Maging kaming mga senador ng Republika ay hindi nakaligtas sa pang-uusig at panggigipit ng administrasyon. Ang kasama nating si Senador Laila de Lima ay halos 5 taon nang pinagkaitan ng kalayaan sa mga gawa-gawang kaso sa droga. The highest office of the land is being used to threaten and attack a number of members of the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, including this representation, to prevent us from ferreting out the truth in the anomalous multi-billion Pharmaly pandemic supply deal. At ang pinakamalaking panganib na kinakaharap natin ngayon ay ang peking balita at paggamit ng social media upang maikalat ang disinformation. With the use of troll armies, a number of politicians, and we even suspect this administration encourages their supporters to harass mainstream journalists, both online and in real life. The propagation of disinformation has become an effective weapon of some political operatives to influence public opinion and the national debate. It is for this reason that we recently introduced a resolution to conduct an inquiry on the proliferation of misinformation, disinformation, and false news sites in social media, particularly on Facebook and YouTube. As we speak, there is an ongoing Senate hearing on disinformation with the end in view of producing an appropriate legislation to combat the menace of false news, of disinformation, to look at the systems that protect the freedoms accorded to all Filipinos, including the freedom of the press and freedom of speech as protected and enshrined in our Constitution. Ang susunod na hearing namin ay sa December 15. Iniimbitahan ko kayong makinig at manood. Sa kawalan ng anumang regulasyon, ang mabilis na pagkalat ng mga peking balita ay may potensyal na ilagay sa panganib ang ating demokrasya. Lalo na ang kinabukasan ng ating mga kabataan. Sa harap ng malaking hamon na ito, meron tayong pagkakataon na mabawi ang diwa at tunay na kahulugan ng kalayaang ng pamamahayag. Ito ay sa pamamagitan ng pagpili ng mga tamang leader na yumayakap sa mga pangunahing demokratikong pagpapahalaga at prinsipyong ito. Bilang pagtatapos, hayaan niyong ulitin ko ang sinabi ng dating Pangulo ng Estados Unidos na si Barack Obama, mga 7 taon na ang nakakaraan, kung paano manalo sa labanang ito. We have to uphold a free press and freedom of speech because in the end, lies and misinformation are no match for the truth. Idagdag ko lang, naniniwala tayo na ang katotohanan ang siyang pinakamalaking antidote laban sa kasinungalingan. The truth resonates while lies will fall flat. Kinakailangan palaganapin ang katotohanan at narariyan ang susi sa malayang pamamahayag. Thank you at magandang araw sa kanilang lahat. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ping Lacson, Honorable Leila de Lima, and Honorable Francis Pangilinan, and to their team for making these video messages.
As we draw near the end of our program, let us listen to the closing remarks to be given by Ms. Nina Micaela D. Gutierrez, the Secretary of the Political Science Society and the co-chairperson of today's event.
Good afternoon. I am Nina Gutierrez, Secretary of the Political Science Society and the co-chairperson of the event. We have finally come to an end of the second major webinar event of the organization, and it would not have been possible without certain individuals who exerted their efforts to make all this possible. We would like to express our deepest gratitude to our guest speaker, Ms. Lyra Magdales, that despite your busy schedule this day, you were able to share your knowledge and wisdom that empowered inspiration, most especially with the youth. To Senator Leila de Lima and staff, we are extremely grateful for your participation in our event and making free time to share such fruitful insights. Thank you for sharing your experience as being an individual personally deprived of rights. Also, thank you to Ms. Marieli Serranilla for reading on behalf of Senator de Lima. To Senator Panfilo Lacson and staff, thank you very much for taking the time to inspire students with your message. It was indeed an honor to have you. To Senator Francis Pangilinan, thank you for enlightening us with the reality of the media and how journalists who are opposing against the people in power are being treated. To our deans and professors, thank you very much for coming to watch and for supporting our event. To Ms. Mariah Likigan, thank you for lending us this platform of communication for a smooth flow for ASEAN integration events. To the Central Escolar University Singers Manila, thank you for leading us into prayer with your angelic voices. The organization wholeheartedly extends our gratitude. To Mr. Jerome Ventanilia, it is a great pleasure to have you, and we are grateful for your participation. Your talent truly captivated us all. To our Political Science Society officers, thank you very much. Most especially to Mr. Julius De Leon, our advisor, we are grateful for your never-ending support and guidance. To our committee members, our Technical Committee, Documentation and Evaluation Committee, Letter and Invitation Committee, Public Materials Design Committee, and our Masters of Ceremonies, thank you all so much. This wouldn't have been possible without you all. To all our participants, thank you very much, and we hope you gained new knowledge. And of course, to my partner, Mr. Shrel Joshua Sanchez, the chairperson of the event and the vice president of the Political Science Society, thank you very much. Indeed, it was a comprehensive talk we all witnessed. Today's topic centered on the status of media in today's generation. Our number one source of information is also a platform that has inevitable clashes with society. Given the situation, we must remember that our rights shall prevail and no one can tell us otherwise. Remember that, as mentioned by Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, the late President Barack Obama said that we have to uphold a free press and freedom of speech because in the end, lies and misinformation are no match for the truth. Again, the whole organization is grateful to the full extent. May we see you again in our future events. Be a one and one who knows. Thank you all so much. Stay safe and God bless.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gutierrez, and thank you everyone for attending our event. For our participants here in Zoom, please click our chat box to see the link to our evaluation form. Please answer it honestly and wait for your certificates to be sent on the email addresses you provide. Also, I would like to invite everyone to listen to our podcast via Spotify. Abangan po ninyo ang ating mga susunod pang guests. So far, we have already interviewed former Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno and senatorial candidates Ms. Samira Gutok and Sorsogon Governor Cheese Escudero. Just search on Spotify the Paul Say Talk and learn more about the political climate of our country.
We hope that you learned a lot regarding our press freedom today, especially here in Southeast Asia. And may you utilize this information to fight for our country's democracy. And for more events and activities, you may visit our Facebook page, CEU Political Science Society. That is CEU Political Science Society on Facebook.
I agree to that, partner. We are now down to the last part of our program, the singing of the CEU hymn. And with that, this has been your hosts. I am Alondra Marie Flores Santo Domingo.
And I am Shrel Joshua Sanchez, saying thank you and goodbye. Mabuhay ka, mahal naming pamantasan, Sentro Escolar.
Mabuhay ka, mahal naming pamantasan, papuri sa dakilang Sentro Escolar. Ika'y dambana ng pag-ibig sa bayan, at agham na sa riyan matagumpay. Kapag ang diwa ng iyong mga hilig, umagona sa puso't bibig, sabay-sabay na ipasisigawan. Mabuhay ka, dakilang Sentro Escolar. Mabuhay ka, mahal naming pamantasan, papuri sa dakilang Sentro Escolar. Ika'y dambana ng pag-ibig sa bayan, at agham na sa